First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Oliver Dowden, who's just resigned. He's been an excellent party chairman. Was a very good culture secretary, did a lot of good with broadband rollout, set up the Office for Veterans Affairs. And yes, it's absolutely true that we've had some tough by-election results, and they've been, I think, a reflection of a lot of things, but we've got to recognise that voters are going through a tough time at the moment. And I think that as a government, I've got to listen to what people are saying, and in particular to the difficulties people are facing over the cost of living, which is, I think, for most people, the number one issue. And there, what we're doing is, as much as we can, to help people, £1,200 for the 8 million most vulnerable households, help for everybody with the cost of heating, trying to cut taxes where we can. But what I can say to people is we will get through this, we will get through it well, but clearly we've got to listen to these results.
Well, Oliver Dowden says you can't go on with business as usual, and everything you've just said is what you've been saying for weeks. This is about you, it's not about all the other stuff.
Well, that may be your view. I think that what governments have also got to recognise is that, although I don't want to in any way to minimise the importance of what voters are saying, it is also true that in mid-term, governments post-war lose by-elections. I think that if you look back to last May, the truly astonishing thing was we managed to win Hartlepool in a very different circumstances. What we need to do now is reflect on where voters are, and I think what they're basically feeling is that we came through COVID well, we took a lot of the right decisions there, but we're now facing pressures on the cost of living. We're seeing spikes in fuel prices, energy costs, food costs. That's hitting people. We've got to recognise that there is more that we've got to do, and we certainly will. We will keep going, addressing the concerns of people until we get through this patch.
Doesn't this tell you that you were not, as you said, vindicated by the Sue Gray report? People are very angry, and they voted to get you out. People have voted tactically to defeat the Conservative Party.
Look, as I say, you see historically in the last 50 years more, you've seen governments being punished at the polls during mid-term when people are particularly feeling economic pressures. And I totally get that. I think that what we've got is the right way forward, and I think that actually we are able to support people because of the decisions that we took. So I think coming out of COVID, we took a lot of the right decisions, but plainly we've got to keep looking after people, making sure that we have a robust, strongly performing economy. As it happens, we've got unemployment very low by historic standards. We've got a lot more people in work than we had before the pandemic began. That's a good background, that's a good basis on which to build, and that's what we're going to do.
Oliver Dowden says someone's got to take responsibility. Are you taking responsibility for these election results?
Plainly, we've had some tough by-election results recently. I think that is something I've got to think about. And you ask who takes responsibility. I of course take responsibility for the electoral performance.
What does that mean?
Of the government.
If you take responsibility, you acknowledge that this was a vote against you personally.
I think that what we've got to realise is that a couple of things. First of all, the economic situation that people are facing right now has changed and is tough because of the increase in prices, because of the increase in energy prices in particular. That's hitting other costs. Now the government is taking huge steps to try to address that, and
but not enough,
we're putting £1,200 going into people's bank accounts.
But not enough, is it? I mean,
let me just try, because I think people need to know.
You've got nothing new to say on what you're giving people today, have you?
Well, we're putting £400 to help everybody, £300 for pensioners, and
this is the business as usual that Oliver Dowden says isn't good enough.
And what we will continue to do is support people throughout the difficult times. I don't think they're going to go on forever. I do think that the price spikes will eventually pass. I think inflation will come down. We have the tools to get inflation down. We're reforming our economy, the way things work. We're reforming our energy markets. We're trying to reform our transport systems in order to reduce costs for people. That's why the strikes are so disappointing. but we were getting on with reforming our housing market to make the cost of housing
Yes, and you've
more
lost
affordable for people.
catastrophically an election in Tiverton,
And so on-
which is a 30% swing. Now, this is about you. This is a reaction, surely, to the Sue Gray report, to the casual law breaking over which you presided, your own fines and your own attitude towards it, which was to say, I was vindicated, not, I broke the law, I'm very sorry, I'll resign.
So I think that there are a lot of things going on, and I in no way wish to minimise people's feelings, and Oliver has made that point. But I think that overwhelmingly it's the job of governments to listen and to learn and to address people's feelings. I think fundamentally this government is on the right track, and I think if you
You're on the right track to lose the next election catastrophically right now. I mean, don't we have to address the Jesse Norman letter to you and all the reasons that he gave for abandoning you as leader of the Conservative Party, which is that the country is facing this massive economic crisis, and you're obsessed with culture wars, with division, with splitting people, with, with breaking the law on the Northern Ireland Protocol, with privatising Channel 4, all this stuff that doesn't matter to most people.
Sorry, I've talked to you exclusively just now about what we're doing.
Yeah, but what are you actually
to
doing?
remedy. Well, I'll tell you. So on reforming the energy markets, where we've got the biggest issue, we've got the biggest spike in price. We need to move away from the system whereby the price for electricity is determined by the top marginal rate paid by earned by the gas producers. So you need to cut the costs of electricity. You need to reform the energy markets. We're getting on with that. You need to have much more supply. We need to rectify the gross mistakes of previous Labour governments that didn't invest in nuclear. We're building a nuclear reactor every year.
But all your political bandwidth. Well, I'm not. Yes, you can't just. All your political bandwidth at the moment is taken up with the European Court of Human Rights, with privatising Channel 4. I mean, these things are not priorities.
This is what you want
when there's an economic crisis.
This is what you want.
No, it's what you're doing. It's what you spend all your time talking about.
This. On the contrary, I'm talking about what we're doing to reform the energy markets. We want to build 50 gigawatts of wind by 2030. We want a nuclear power station nuclear reactor every year rather than every 10 years. We're going to be much less phobic about using domestic hydrocarbons where they can substitute for international imports. It's an extremely sensible thing to do. So you need to reform the energy market.
Are you saying it's time for you to get serious?
Then let me just continue what we're doing to reform the way.
No, but this is not well. We're not talking about energy markets right now. We'll do that another time. I mean, this is a bigger picture question, which is whether you can carry on leading the Conservative Party, because you were a winner and now you're losing catastrophically. You've had 3 terrible by-election losses, and your colleagues are saying it's time to get rid of him.
Well, they had an opportunity a few weeks ago, and actually, my share of support amongst my colleagues actually increased, Christian, and we're getting on with the job. And look,
40% of that wanted you out. What do you think this by-election is going to do to that?
Look, if governments folded because of mid-term by-elections, we wouldn't have had any post-war governments. We're getting on with the job. We've got to make sure that we not only reform our energy markets, we reform the way our transport networks function. And you look at the cost of rail for people. It's too high. And so when it comes to things like ticket offices that sell fewer than a ticket an hour, or walking time, it's time for reform and change.
Yes, but you've got strikes going. You're talking about transport, and the country is at a standstill because of strikes that you won't intervene on.
On precisely those issues, and that's why we need to have reform. We need to.
You're making a mess of it. That is the point. We've got 3 strikes this week, and the people are saying, "What on earth is the government doing?" Boris Johnson's off in Rwanda talking about deporting asylum seekers.
What the government is doing is reforming the way that we put huge sums into the railways. Let's have an argument on railways, okay?
No.
Let's talk about some serious subjects. So, railways, this is a government no government in modern times has invested more in the railways. £96 billion into the integrated rail plan.
And people couldn't get to work yesterday.
So
that's the bottom line, isn't it? You can say all of that. The bottom line is people couldn't go to school or work yesterday because they're on strike.
People deserve a serious conversation about this. When ridership is down 25% on the rail, and massive investment is going in, £16 billion more to to shield the railway industry during the pandemic. It cost every family in the country £600. People are entitled to see reform and improvement.
These elections will also go about standards. You don't have a standards advisor right now, and we still don't know the truth of whether you tried to carry a job in government or the royal family, and we don't have anyone who's going to investigate that. Lord Guy says this is an issue ripe for picking. Are you looking urgently for a standards advisor?
Well, the last I talked to Lord Guy, he was keen to stay on until the end of the year, so we haven't got anybody immediately.
Nobody can look into this controversy.
There was a question about steel tariffs, about which there was I think a legitimate disagreement. But of course there will be a replacement in due course.
Many people are concerned about your standards. You know, we've had this whole Partygate nightmare for you, which showed the casual law breaking in Downing Street, and they say this is about you and it's about the kind of man you are.
Can I give you?
And they were prepared to forgive you as long as you were running the country okay, but now things are a mess. The economy's a mess, the country's on strike, we're looking at a summer of discontent. What's the point of Boris Johnson if he can't run the country?
I'll tell you what we're doing. And the golden rule of politics is to try to avoid the temptations of the media, brilliant though you are, to talk about politics, to talk about families. What we're doing is getting on with delivering for the British public.
Yeah, but the British public have given you their verdict in these by-elections, and you don't seem to be listening.
I'm sorry, I'm explaining to you what we're doing, and I'm in no way minimising the importance of what people are saying. But I think that it is the job of government when things are tough, when things are difficult for people. It's the job of government to keep going and to keep delivering, and that's what we're going to do.
Boris Johnson, thank you.
Thank you.
The Prime Minister speaking to me this morning. Well, this afternoon he suffered another political setback when the Labour peer, Baroness Scotland, was re-elected as the Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, leaders choosing her over the Prime Minister's preferred candidate from Jamaica. Boris Johnson is here overnight for a dinner and various meetings before flying to his next summit, the G7 in Germany tomorrow. And it's all building up to more questions around NATO's role in the Ukraine. But for now, back to Jackie.
Thanks, Chris. Now, it was a decision that America knew was coming. Nevertheless, there was jubilation from those who want abortion banned.